Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, a big acreage report out from USDA, so we brought in three veteran analysts. We have Bill Biedermann, Arlan Suderman, as well as Bob Utterback joining us now. All right, immediately when that report came out showing fewer corn acres, more soybean acres this year, Bill, beans not responding favorably to that news.
Soybeans sharply lower on a number that was really knee-buckling, both in the acreage number, way at the top end of expectations, and indicating that even with just a trendline yield, we could have close to maybe 500 million bushel carryover. But then the quarterly stocks number, when you look at what's on farm and what's in commercial storage, the numbers themselves are staggering. However, I have to say that the trade was already expecting a 340 million bushel increase from last year. So when you put it into that perspective, the stocks number was really only 28 million bushel greater than what we thought. But the headline of it was very negative.
Yeah, Arlan, I mean, when you look at the acreage picture, the stocks number, what was the biggest shock, do you think, to the trade?
Well, I think I agree with this. The soybean acreage number being larger than what was anticipated. I'm not as bearish as soybeans. I don't think we fully accounted for the 35 million metric tons that have been lost from South America's crop this year. I think we needed to see an increase closer to at least 90 million acres. So we'll absorb some of this. It's just not as tight as what we thought. I think we're seeing a spreading between the markets right now, making the soybeans look worse. But overall, the market is trying to shift some acreage from soybeans to corn. And if the weather's good, that's what typically happens anyway.
Yeah, Bob, in a year like this, though, do you think we will see a big shift in acreage after this report? I know this is planting intentions, but growers are having a hard time sourcing these inputs. Do you think that this may be kind of locked in at this point?
I think it's locked in. I think the acreage number on corn is probably closer than we really want it to be. And if you look at Missouri, clear to Ohio, guys are getting a little inchy. They always get, but I think we're going to start seeing the weather become a primary influence on the market as we come into April. And it looks like to me we're going to be a couple of weeks late and still not going to have big impact on yields as long as we don't go from cold and wet to hot and dry. But I think it could have a lot of impact on the basis behavior in that August, September time period if we don't have a lot of that early corn coming off the market. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but and I think we still got a pretty amount of inventory on farmers want to sell some corn. I've had more inquiries about, okay, the last 20, 30% of my corn, should I move it now or hold it? So there's still a lot of questions out for the guys to resolve.
Yeah, Bill, when you look at these acreage numbers, though, wheat, even though we've seen wheat prices move significantly, it's not enticing farmers, at least it seems, to plant more spring wheat this year.
Well, and that could be, but up in the North Dakota area where, we have a lot of clientele, there's a lot of different crops. There's barley, there's canola, well, not the canola, but the spring wheat. There's a multiple of other types of sunflowers that are going to go into the ground, and we're not going to see a shift over to beans. And I don't think you're going to see as big a shift to the spring wheat is what could make up for today's number. Today's number does indicate, though, that if we have a really good yield of 49.7, which is about what we had back in 2020, we could have a carryover that's about unchanged from where we're at right now, 650 to 680 million bushel. I don't think it's going to change things. It's not going to restore the stocks levels to what we had before when we were carrying 1 billion bushels a year. So there's good reasons to find support on the wheat, especially with the drought conditions we have from Montana down to the tip of Texas.
Well, Arlan, what do the markets now watch from here on out, as we get into these prime spring planting months?
Well, I think very soon we're going to shift back to focusing on Ukraine and the impact that we're seeing there, the geopolitical risk. We're also going to be watching how the weather forecast shapes up for spring planting. We're pretty wet and cool in the eastern Midwest. Will we warm up and dry out there and shift the rains to the west where they need it, like some forecasters say? Or will we continue to perpetuate this current cycle that we're in, like other forecasters say? The next month should tell us a lot about that.
Yeah, Bill, do you think it's possibly we see planting delayed a little bit?
Everybody's itching to get out there pretty quick. I mean, I don't know what the weather forecast is going to end up being, but I do know that the forecasters that we follow are really concerned in the Western belt and how dry it is and what the patterns look like. I mean, in order to keep carryover above pipeline levels in corn, we're going to need 180 bushel yield. And that just gets us to the pipeline the way we've established the numbers the last couple of years. If we have a yield of 177, which is a record yield that we established last year, I'm showing carryover will be below 1 billion bushel. This is a problem, especially if we have a weather issue.
All right, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more to talk